Well, the New York Mets have made their first big move this offseason as they have signed a guy who I've wanted for a while now on the Mets, Eduardo Escobar, to a 2-year, $20 million contract, could get upwards to $25 million. In this video, I'm going to go over the Eduardo Escobar signing, what it means for the Mets, and how it could just impact the team because this guy could do a lot of different things. Comment down below, what are your thoughts on the Eduardo Escobar move by the New York Mets, and what move should be next? Obviously, there are some starting pitchers that are out there that the Mets really need to focus on, and other positions, but what players in particular should the Mets be targeting? And if you're new here and you want to stay in the holiday spirit, the giving spirit, you always can subscribe. It is greatly appreciated. So Eduardo Escobar, I made a video a couple weeks ago talking about what would be the best fit for a free agent and for a team. And I thought that the most perfect fit for the Mets in the free agent market is Eduardo Escobar. We've known for a while now that the New York Mets have wanted to upgrade at third base. For whatever reason, this front office is not fond of J.D. Davis. So we've seen the Mets look at so many different third basemen, whether that was Chris Bryant or Matt Chapman or Kyle Seager or a bunch of others. Now, while Eduardo Escobar's primary position is third base, he was an all-star this year for the Arizona Diamondbacks, primarily playing third base. That's not all that Eduardo Escobar does. What I've always liked about Escobar is the fact that he plays multiple positions. He can play all over the infield, and in a pinch, he can even play some outfield. Another plus about Eduardo Escobar is that he is a switch hitter, which is always really nice to have in your lineup. This way, if you have another manager that's a crazy lefty-righty matchup guy like Luis Rojas, you don't have to worry about that because Eduardo Escobar can match up with either side. And what has the Mets' biggest weakness been offensively when it comes to scoring runs? That is hitting with runners on base, driving in those runs. And that's something that Eduardo Escobar has routinely done at a very high level. I say it all the time, but in 2019 with the Arizona Diamondbacks, this is a guy that had 118 RBIs. And then this year, he had another season above 80 RBIs. And that's what the Mets need because we've seen far too many times where the Mets have guys that are on base and they can't bring them in. But if you have Eduardo Escobar batting in that 5th or 6th slot with a couple guys on, he could drive home Pete Alonso. He could drive home Francisco Lindor. And it would make such a big difference for the Mets. As far as defense, obviously he is no Matt Chapman over there at third base, but he is an upgrade over J.D. Davis, and he is an upgrade over Jonathan Villar. The one concern you might have about Eduardo Escobar is, oh man, he's 32 years old. He's going to be 33 next year. We know that when it comes to baseball players, once you get to that age, you're only going to get worse. But what I love about this deal is the Mets only gave him a 2-year contract. So by the time he's 35 and kind of dwindling off, he won't be a New York Met anymore. So they got him right where he still is effective. And they didn't overpay by any means at all. If it's true that this is only a $20 million contract, honestly, a $10 million AAV of Eduardo Escobar is a complete steal in my opinion. Because in my opinion, I think he's worth a lot more than that just because of how many different things he could do to help out your team. Now, when the Mets first signed Eduardo Escobar, one of the thoughts I had was we saw this report that the Detroit Tigers are looking at Javier Baez, and we know that the Tigers have a ton of money to spend. And I don't want to say necessarily could outbid the Mets on Javier Baez, but I think that the Tigers could overpay Baez to the point where the Mets would be kind of silly to outbid the kind of contract that Detroit could offer Javier Baez. So let's just say there is a scenario where the Mets are not able to retain Javier Baez. You could have Eduardo Escobar fill in at second base or wherever else you need him. If Baez has the injuries, if other guys get hurt, you could have Eduardo Escobar play there for an extended period of time. Mike Puma from the New York Post said that just because the Mets signed Eduardo Escobar, that does not necessarily mean that they cannot re-sign Javier Baez as well. So if the Mets could get both of those guys in the lineup, that definitely would help out this team even more. This now gives the Mets the opportunity to trade J.D. Davis if that's something that works for both sides. Like I said earlier, it seems like the Mets are not crazy about J.D. Davis, and J.D. publicly has said that he is aware of that. So if he is traded, it would not surprise me. It would be unfortunate because he is a really good guy, someone I root for, and someone I do believe has some talent in that bat, but he just wouldn't be a good fit on this team if you have Eduardo Escobar and you have Javier Baez, Jeff McNeil. All of a sudden, J.D. Davis, where are you going to play him? If there is a DH, you have other candidates. I mean, let's not forget, as of right now, Robinson Cano is still on this team. You have guys in minor leagues like maybe Mark Vientos could surprise you and become a DH. So now you have to figure out what are you going to do with these guys because we know the Mets could use pitching depth. So if you could put J.D. Davis and maybe even a Dominic Smith in a trade to get pitching depth, you now have the ability to do that because you have someone like Eduardo Escobar where you're not like, oh, we can't trade J.D. Davis because we have no one to play third base. This also means that the Mets probably don't have to re-sign Jonathan Villar. I know it's something that they talked talked about with him a while back in the offseason. But as of right now, again, he wouldn't really have a role on his team, because what I love about Eduardo Escobar is that he could start for you for a full season and be very productive. And if somehow your team is strong enough to where he's a utility player, I mean, that's just icing on the cake. Now, as I said earlier, obviously the Mets still have a lot more work to do, and it starts off with the starting pitching. We know that they need some starting pitchers. A report came out today that the Mets are significantly interested in Kevin Gausman. And Kevin Gausman is a good guy to target because he does not have a qualifying offer attached to him, compared to someone like Robbie Ray, where you would have to give up the 14th pick in the draft if you want to sign Ray. Now, Gausman, his one really good year was this year, so you always have that concern of, is he a one-year wonder? And that's something the Mets have got to be very careful of, and you don't want to overpay Kevin Gausman for a guy that really has only had one great year. I still think the main guy to focus on is Marcus Stroman, because he is a little more proven than Kevin Gausman. He's done it for a longer period of time, and he did it in New York Mets uniform, which is very important, because Kevin Gausman pitching for the San Francisco Giants and pitching for the New York Mets are two completely different animals. Another nice thing about this being a 2-year contract for Eduardo Escobar is that it makes a perfect timeline for the emergence of Brett Baty to be the next third baseman. So you could have Eduardo Escobar be a third baseman, whether it's this year or next year or just this year, and then it is wide open for Brett Baty to take over, have enough time to develop, not rush him up to the major leagues and have him struggle. At least he can learn from Escobar, he can learn from everybody else, and be fully ready to be the New York Mets starting third baseman, hopefully for a very long time. And if that's the case, you always have to wonder, well, what do you do with Ronnie Mauricio? What do you do with Mark Vientos? But I don't think the Mets are up to that point quite yet. They got to take it one step at a time. And right now it's November 26th. They do have this deadline, December 1st, December 2nd, where it looks like there's most likely going to be a strike, and there will be no free agency transactions until that strike is over. So will the Mets try to cram in a couple more moves before that deadline happens? I do think that Javier Baez will sign before that deadline, because it looks like he is someone that is in a lot of active discussion with multiple teams, whether that is the Mets or the Red Sox or the Tigers or the Cubs or whoever else is looking at Baez. I do think that he will sign before then. Now, we know that Steve Cohen was very angry with the way the Steven Matz situation went down, with the way the Noah Syndergaard situation went down. I think that Steve Cohen needs to, and Billy Epler and Sandy Alderson and Sandy Alderson's son and Sandy Alderson's dog and everybody else has got to make sure that Javier Baez's last offer comes from the New York Mets and not get caught asleep at the wheel again. You don't want the Mets to get caught off guard again, where it's like, oh, we didn't know this guy was going to sign with another team. We didn't know that he was going to go there. We didn't get a chance to give a better offer. The Mets cannot let that happen again, especially with Baez. You invested so much into this guy, giving up Picoro Armstrong. We know how much Francisco Lindor wants him to be here, and we saw how many good things Javier Baez could do for you. Now, when it comes to him, they got to be very careful with his contract, because he is a guy that's not going to age well with how much he strikes out. Which is another good thing about Eduardo Escobar, is that he is not a crazy strikeout player. And we look at his Baseball Savant page, Escobar, he doesn't do anything amazing. He doesn't have this great hard hit rate and this barrel percentage and this chase percentage and all these other percentages that people like. But what he does do is he just puts bat on ball when it matters most. I mean, we never seen the Mets play small ball, get a sacrifice fly, move the runner over, just putting the ball in play, good things happen. And that's what Eduardo Escobar brings to the table. So I hope that the Mets could get more guys like Eduardo Escobar, and I hope that he plays really well so that I don't look like a dummy a year later to be like, oh, I was talking so much about Escobar, and he stinks. This will be a different transition for him. Escobar has been around the league. He's been with Arizona. He's been with Minnesota. This year he was with Milwaukee at the trade deadline. So New York is going to be a different adjustment for him. But luckily, since the Mets did not pay him a lot and he doesn't have extremely high expectations, I hope the fan base isn't all over him. And as soon as Escobar messes up, they're booing him, because I'm not sure how he would handle that. So we just got to be patient with it, give this guy some time, and I promise he could do a lot of good things. So until the next video, which hopefully is soon, we need more moves to happen before this deadline. Be safe, be smart, be healthy, and let's go Mets. Go make some more moves. I love this one.